But let's get into these running back tiers. Let's get into these running backs. All right, so tier 1 is headed by some strong plays here. I have one guy that normally I'd put in tier 1 that I put in tier 2, even though I think he's going to have a strong game. But in tier 1, we got Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor. Bijan Robinson up against Philly on Monday night. Saquon up against Atlanta on Monday night. You can flip-flop either one of these guys. They're at the top of this tier, in my opinion. Jonathan Taylor, I wanted to put him at the top of this tier because I think he's going to have a better matchup. But the floor, right? I got to recognize the floor isn't there with the pass-catching upside. But I had Jonathan Taylor up here yesterday, and just thinking about it, I was like, you know what? I got to recognize the floor that Bijan and Saquon have in the passing game. And if they both get touchdowns, they're eclipsing what Jonathan Taylor can do. So I think those three head the tier, but Bijan and Saquon in PPR leagues headed a little bit higher for me because of their pass-catching upside. Also in this tier, Alvin Kamara, Joe Mixon, Breece Hall. And a lot of people are going to be like, well, why isn't Breece Hall, like, why didn't you mention him at the top of this tier with Bijan and Saquon? He has the pass-catching upside as well, but it's a tough matchup against Tennessee. And we got to see this Jets offense be able to move the football. And that Tennessee defense did a lot. They were doing damage against the Bears, albeit last week. But I think this Tennessee defense might be a tougher matchup than people think. So I got Breece Hall tiered down a little bit. Alvin Kamara and Joe Mixon, obviously strong matchups against Dallas and Chicago this week. And then as far as the next tier goes, I think this is where there's going to be the most debate in this tier. And like I said, if you want to see this entire Excel sheet, it's in the fantasy football rankings on my Dub Club. Check the description or the link in my bio, either way. But we got Jahmyr Gibbs against Tampa, Isaiah Pacheco against the Bengals, Rachaad White against Detroit, Kyren against the Cardinals, Devon Achane against the Bills. So all of these guys present RB1 upside. I think the floor is a little bit lower, like if Jahmyr Gibbs dealing with David Montgomery in his backfield. Isaiah Pacheco obviously isn't the focal point if they decide to go a little bit more air attack. And he doesn't catch as many passes as some of these guys. Rachaad White, obviously going up against one of the better front lines in Detroit. Kyren Williams, dealing, you know what I'm saying? This is a plus matchup for him. But is this team going to be throwing the football a lot, and that offensive line looks a little bit in shambles? Devon Achane, dealing with an injury, going up against a tough Buffalo defense. So there's a lot at stake here when it comes to like the potential and the risk. That's why they're in this next tier. And then a couple other players in this tier, James Conner, Derrick Henry, James Cook. James Conner going up against the Rams. I think he'll have a phenomenal day against the Rams. Derrick Henry against the Raiders. I can see him having upside. Doesn't catch a lot of passes. James Cook doesn't score a lot of touchdowns in a fast-paced game against Miami, I'm assuming. Should be a good play as well. And then to round out this tier, a couple names I don't, for different reasons, either higher or lower than I normally would put them. Jordan Mason against the Vikings. Obviously, this is a Christian McCaffrey spot. Jordan Mason, Travis Etienne against the Browns. Josh Jacobs against the Colts. Ramondre Stevenson against Seattle. That is how I'd round out this tier. I think Ramondre is a good play. Josh Jacobs, all depends on the quarterback, right? All depends on Malik Willis, how he's able to move the football, where we actually see him finish. So those are kind of risky plays. Obviously, Travis Etienne going up against Cleveland, a tough defense, but I see some potential with Travis Etienne, right, in the passing game specifically to neutralize the pass rush going up against the Browns. So that's how I play that tier out. All right. So those are around your tier 2 guys. We got Gibbs, Pacheco, White, Kyren Williams, Devon Achane, James Conner, Derrick Henry, James Cook, Jordan Mason, Travis Etienne, Josh Jacobs, Ramondre Stevenson. All those guys can finish back end RB1, high end RB2, to mid tier RB2. All right, tier 3. We got Kenneth Walker dealing with an ab oblique injury going up against New England. Najee Harris against Denver. I think this is a strong start. Aaron Jones against the Niners. Tony Pollard against the Jets. Brian Robinson against the Giants. Now, I think these are some names that we're very familiar with and offer starting running back, obviously upside. But some of these guys got tougher matchups, right? Like New England is a tougher matchup, you could say. The Niners, obviously, good front line there. The Jets and the Giants. I think the Giants is kind of softer, but the Jets present a tough matchup. It's just we saw Jordan Mason kind of cook them up. So all these guys have risk as well. We were drafting them as RB2s for the most part, RB3s for some of them, but they are in this tier as well. And then rounding out this third tier, we got David Montgomery against the Tampa Bay Bucks, Jerome Ford against Jacksonville, Zach Moss against KC, Devin Singletary against Washington. So these are more floor plays, right? Like your guys, David Montgomery's, your Jerome Fords, Zach Moss, your Singletaries. They don't offer a ton of upside unless they have just some kind of, chunk play or they score multiple touchdowns. These guys are mostly under 100-yard rushers, don't catch more than 2 to 3 passes maximum, or it's a zero catch guy. And then they don't, their touchdowns outside of David Montgomery aren't as frequent, right? But have decent chances to score, especially like Devin Singletary against a softer defense in Washington. Talk about Jerome Ford in his matchup against Jacksonville. He should be up and down. And then Zach Moss has if they get to the end zone, they're going to want to play power football, slow down things against that Kansas City defense. That's tier 3. I'll go through tier 4 and tier 5 unless you guys absolutely want to hear anything outside of that. I'll go through tier 4 and tier 5, and that'll be it. As far as tier 4 goes, these are your questionable, very questionable RB2s. Very questionable RB2s. This is outside of your RB2s. This is more the RB3 range, but maybe could have an RB2 type day, but has a chance, obviously, for an RB4 type day. Javonte Williams against Pittsburgh, tough matchup there for him going up against Pittsburgh. Obviously in a committee as well. Zamir White against Baltimore in a committee. We don't know if he's on the good side of that or not just yet. I'm not going to penalize him too much off of 1 week. DeAndre Swift up against Houston Texans. J.K. Dobbins against Carolina. So with DeAndre Swift, we saw him do absolutely nothing last week, going up against a tough Houston defense who pretty much stymied Jonathan Taylor for the most part. Obviously, he got in the end zone. But we got to see what this Bears offensive line looks like. And DeAndre Swift we got to see him look the part too. Had a strong run early, but that was really all we saw from him. J.K. Dobbins, is he the starter or is he not the starter? I gave him respect, right? I put him up in this tier because if he is a starter, he's probably going to be RB2 levels this week if he does earn 15 touches. So we got to see the touches. Is it a split or is it a hot hand? I'll show him respect and put him in this RB3 flex type tier, but I have questions about it. I do. And then Ezekiel Elliott, Tajay Spears round out this tier of those questionable starters. Tajay Spears, do you get more workload? Or are you still the backup? Ezekiel Elliott, can you be more involved in the passing game? Was that a 1 week thing? Do we see more Rico Dowdle this week? All right, and it's a tough matchup against the Saints. But I do like Zeke this week as a RB3 flex. All right, so that's for tier 4. Javonte, Zamir, Swift, J.K. Dobbins, Zeke, and Tajay Spears. Kind of a thinner tier, I would say. And then as far as tier 5 goes, we got Gus Edwards against Carolina. I don't love the play, but I'm just putting him up here in case J.K. Dobbins and him do split. Chuba Hubbard against the Chargers. I want completely out on this Chuba Hubbard tier. Chase Brown, Jalen Warren, Austin Eckler all offer the pass catching upside. Zach Charbonnet will get bumped up if Kenneth Walker cannot play in this game against the Patriots, but I have him in this tier. And then Alexander Madison as well against Baltimore. Both of those guys split and work. So this is a lot of like the splitting work guys, except for Chuba Hubbard. I don't know how to gauge him right now in this Panthers offense. I have my doubts, but I just don't know how to gauge against this Panthers with this Panthers offense. Excuse me. The other guys are all splitting work. Don't really have a true path to like workload to be an RB3 or RB2 for your team. All right. The last one, there's one more name I'm going to mention because I didn't put him in this tier. Jalen Wright. With Devon Achane expected to play, there's a lot of question marks. Do you start Jalen Wright? A, we got to see him activated, which he should be activated with Raheem Mostert out. B, we got to see the usage. Jeff Wilson is ahead of him right now. So, and I don't even have Jeff Wilson on my rankings. He should be in the same spot. But Jalen Wright is the upside play. Like he's definitely a play all for upside. So if he hits, I think he'll have a good opportunity to showcase his talents. I think he's better than Jeff Wilson. Jeff Wilson has a nominal starting spot right now. He would be in that same tier below. All right.